Alright, I got a request to do some Aquaman, and I don't have much, but here is Aquaman #1 from 1993. This is David Peters' first issue on Aquaman. This is the miniseries that came before the ongoing. Time and Tide. First issue blockbuster. Guest star in The Flask. Don't get your hopes up, it's only Barney Allen. I do like this cover. This is a good first issue cover. It's better than the cover to the first issue of the ongoing, even. And we start with something David Peter did often in his run, I think. I've not read enough of it to really say that with any authority. He might not do this, but there would be these slice of life moments showing things that involve sea life or things that involve pollution, and in this case a little girl's goldfish has died, so they flush it down the loo, and we see the adventure that its remains go on, and how it eventually is ate by a bigger fish. To quote Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, there is always a bigger fish. This is David Peters' first issue writing Aquaman, but there are two other things of note before this. His first time writing the character was in an issue of Sacred Origins, which retold the origin of the Justice League of America. I feel like such a sap. And then there was SeaWorld Chronicles, which was Aquaman mythology, but all the stuff before Aquaman. The final page of SeaWorld Chronicles was Baby Aquaman riding a dolphin. That was like the extent of Aquaman's involvement in the ironically dry recap of SeaWorld history. This does tie into SeaWorld Chronicles. Not enough that you should ever have to read it, but the idea is that Aquaman himself has just read the same history, and what we have here is, in function, a sequel in part to SeaWorld Chronicles, which now will cover parts of Aquaman history. I don't think any of the collections of David Peters' run bother with SeaWorld Chronicles. That would be a terrible and horrible thing to front load an Aquaman collection with. Unlike SeaWorld Chronicles, we aren't doing this in any order. We have this miniseries. It is neither a complete history of Aquaman, nor is it presented in linear fashion. First issue here as his first outing as a hero on the surface worlds. I think issue 2 has him as a kid, and then issue 3 is his first encounter with his arch nemesis, and then the final issue is him as a teenager having sex with a native woman in the Antarctic. This miniseries stands by itself is the thing I'm trying to say. You don't have to read that boring SeaWorld Chronicles beforehand. And this itself is far from a similar style, despite the link between the two. This is also not where Aquaman loses his hand. That is the ongoing. That's the first story in the ongoing. That came immediately after this. I think the last issue of this mini, it maybe even ends with a next month, the all-new Aquaman ongoing. So, Here we are off to the races with our flashback and our main story for issue 1. We have the Flask villain, Trickster, also from the pages of Smurf Devil. He has been robbing a cruise, but his scheme is interrupted by the Flask, who is then interrupted by the sudden arrival of Aquaman from the sea. First meeting here, the Flask doesn't know who Aquaman is, and so he is distracted just enough so that Trickster can make good on his escape and gets away. There is another thing I cannot say with any knowledge, but I will say is that one of the running jokes, one of the ongoing sources of humour in David Peters' Aquaman, is the conversations between things like sharks here, or dolphins, or other fish, and how most of them are stupid and have crap memories. Here we have the Flask, Barney Allen, learning about Aquaman. I don't know how neatly this ties into it, but this could be a good companion for, or a good additional piece with that Sacred Origins story. That story comes after this, but you could maybe slot that in as the unofficial 5th part of the Time and Tide story. I should also say that I like this issue. We have a great sequence here with Aquaman tracking down Trickster in his goofy Silver Age submarine. David Peters' writing, especially his humour and sarcasm, it can be too much a lot of the time. But this first issue, the only issue of the miniseries I have, it's perfect. We have small bits of comedy like the sharks, or we have punchy scenes like this. Punchy in 2 ways. Barney Allen literally punches Trickster on this page, on top of the dialogue being sharp and concise. I'll talk about the artwork now. The artist here is Kirk Van Houten. He sleeps in a racing car bed. Do you? Mainly know him for fill-in issues. He did an Extra Factor fill-in issue 70. His art is great in that one. That's all I really consciously remember of him. He doesn't do the Aquaman ongoing that comes along after this. I am sure he's done plenty of other things, and I've heard tell he's a pretty big wheel down at the Cracker Factory. This bit is probably the most David Peter that it gets. We have a bit where they come up with the name Aquaman, and then a guy wants to be his manager and merchandise the shit out of him. But Aquaman, he quickly has his fill of this crazy world. He encounters Trickster again in front of a mob who all want Aquaman's autograph. And I really like this bit, but I don't think everyone will. Aquaman, he is fed up and he doesn't even want to fight Trickster. He just doesn't care. He wants to storm off and go back to the seas. And the mob start booing him. And Trickster keeps egging him on and calling him a coward and whatnot. So eventually, Trickster gets close enough that Aquaman just knocks him out. The people think that this was all Aquaman's plan, that he was feigning his upset to lure Trickster close. But it wasn't. Aquaman is fucking fed up of this confusing world and its ugly people. The Flask meets up with and helps smooth some things over for Aquaman before he leaves. He reminds Aquaman that not all people are bad. It's a good opening issue. David Peter always usually started stuff off well. He would have a good story, or he would feel like a fresh voice. I've not read his Aquaman, but I do have the one where he loses his hand. I've also got one where he fights the Justice League. There's one where he fights Superboy as well, Wallace Gromit cover. And I think there's a Day of Vegans tie-in. That is it though, those are all my Aquaman comics, I think. No, wait, there's one more. I have a John Jeffries one, only for its Paulie pellet gun cover. If you want me to look at more Aquaman, those are your choices. 3 David Peter issues, a tie-in issue that won't make any sense without copious amounts of explaining, or a John Jeffries comic that I probably never even read and that I don't want to read. The question here would be, do I recommend this? And I'm not sure. It's not bad. I'm not implying it is. But I don't know if it's something that is going to work for everyone. I think there's a lot of stuff here that... Yeah, you know what? I will. I recommend Aquaman 1 by David Peter and Kirk Van Houten. The miniseries, not the ongoing. 1993, not 1994. I do really like its cover. It's, let's be honest, blatantly Seaman #1. But who cares? It's a good cover for a first issue. It was good in 1968, and it's good in 1993. I'll give this 7 C's up. That's good, isn't it? 7 C's up, because it's Aquaman. 7 C's up.